Winifred Hope Parks on the ivories. And Mr. Jim Carper will sing for us. Jim, stand up for a second, let us see you. And then you are going to have to entertain a little bit also, but Miss Parks will let you know about that.
Did they show you the stuff? Yeah.
Karen and Jimmy and our wonderful Floral Heights choir have been introducing us to the vintage music, religious music. What I've been banging around on here is also it's secular music from that era. And I hope you've enjoyed listening to it. And I have some more. We're going to have a special treat in a minute. But back in 1914, an itinerant musician, actually he was from Texas, we need to remember that, wrote the high-flying ragtime classic, 12th Street Rag. Hey, can you all hear me? Am I holding this right? I'm not used to doing this. Okay, I'll start with the high-flying ragtime classic, 12th Street Rag. It was written in 1914, but it didn't actually take off till about 1919, and actually it's still popular today. So I'm going to try to struggle through it, okay? 12th Street Rag. Pat your foot, go ahead and do so. You gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris? How's that for a song title? Well, it was written in 1919, the year following the armistice that ended World War I. The idea that the Doughboys had such a good time in gay Paris that they would never again settle for the drudgery of farm life. This forecast the overall change in the moral standards and turned the 1920s into the jazz age. Now we have our own Jim Carper to sing for us. How you gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris?
Gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris. How you gonna keep them away from Broadway, jazzing around and painting the town? How you gonna keep them away from hard? That's a mystery. They'll never want to see a rake or plow. And who the deuce can parley-vous a cow? How you gonna keep them down on the farm after they've seen Paris?
even today, Take Me Out to the Ball Game is known as the anthem of our national sport, which is baseball. Yeah. Here in our town, it was especially popular at Sputter Park, which was opened in 1920 as a home for the Wichita Falls semi-pro baseball team known as the Sputters. And we've been trying to figure out what that means and why they named it that. Does anybody know?
Spudding a well is the beginning stage of drilling an oil well, so that's why they were called the sputters.
Did y'all get that? Sputters drilling an oil well. Okay. Now then, big news.
Got way out of the way.
In 1930, the New York Yankees came to Sputter Park to play our Sputters. Babe Ruth knocked 2 home runs out of the park. But ultimately, the Sputters won the game 9-6. Okay, now, we think that everybody, as I said, every red-blooded American ought to be able to sing the anthem for our national sport. So Jim's going to sing through Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and then we're going to do it again, and you all are going to all sing, okay? If you're not too full.
Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the park. I don't care if you. I went blank. Yeah. Sorry about that.
We know the words.
That's our comedy routine for the night. Me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if we'll never get back. Root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game. Everybody sing it this time. Take me out to the ball game. Take me out with the crowd. Buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if we never get back. It's root for the home team. If they win, it's a shame. It's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Okay. We're through.
It's like hee-haw, we're through now. Pastor Brian is going to come and say a blessing for us.
Would you all pray with me? Oh God, we just pause to thank you, a splendid day that we have been given. The opportunity to break bread, to fellowship, to be a part of such rich memories that this congregation has, that this community has about this congregation, and for the ways that we can think about how you will use us for the next 100 years. Thank you for this evening, for the planning team, for the History Night subcommittee team, the cooking team, but most especially we thank you for your son Jesus, who came into this world to offer us salvation. And so we thank you for his power, his presence, and for making opportunities like this a reality. So thank you for each and every one that is here. Thank you for this theme of this evening, and let our history point to our future. We ask and pray your blessings upon us. May we be faithful in our following of you. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Ms. Brooks has something to read for us.
Good evening. I'm going to read a little bit out of the song on Jordan's Stormy Banks, and I want you to think about the people that walked from our original tabernacle. As they were walking, they were singing this song, and then they arrived here at the new location. But I also want you to be thinking about us going into the next 100 years of Floral Heights. As I am reading, just close your eyes and imagine. On Jordan's stormy banks, I stand and cast a wishful eye to Canaan's fair and happy land, where my possessions lie. O'er all those wide extended plains shines one eternal day. There God, the sun, forever reigns and scatters night away. I am bound for the promised land. I am bound for the promised land. Oh, who will come and go with me? I am bound for the promised land. Amen.
Chris, are you ready for the song? Sure. And now we're going to hear from Mr. Rodney Bertram and Mary Weber. They're going to give you some history.
Good evening. Wichita Falls, the city that faith built. It was after the Civil War that the country began to rebuild and expand. America needed healing from the ravages of war. As families decided to head west to begin their new life, many of those pioneers settled in north central Texas in Wichita County. Eventually, the Fort Worth and Denver City Railroad reached the tiny settlement of Wichita Falls in September 1882. In 1884, a young T.J. Wagoner joined a trail drive headed for Kansas and helped move cattle across the Red River near Charley. I think that's so cool. I really do. I would have loved to have seen that. I just imagine it from the old movies that, when you'd see them taking cattle across the river. This young cowboy would soon marry, and eventually his family would become founding members of Floral Heights Methodist Church. By the turn of the century, Wichita Falls had become a regional transportation and distribution center, and over time, a hub of commerce and industry. The city was growing. In 1910, Mr. John Bland owned a grocery store, and his younger brother was a delivery clerk. John and Della Brand and their two young sons would also become founding members of Floral Heights Methodist. In November 1915, Wichita General Hospital was built at 8th and Brook, providing a much-needed professional medical facility. It was considered a modern institution of 30 beds. Europe was in turmoil. The U.S. declared war on Germany in 1917, and immediately the brave men of Wichita Falls began filling out World War I draft registration cards and signing up for the Army. Among those who registered to fight were John Bland, Edgar Breedlove, Lester Jones, and Preston Lee. A few years later, these men would have a hand in the building of the future of Floral Heights Methodist Church.
There were new oil discoveries about this time, which brought in not only money, but a massive flood of people. The government was buying up North Texas oil to ship to the Allies. At the height of the oil boom in 1918, lodging was scarce in Wichita Falls, you can imagine. The 500 block of Scott Street was lined with sleeping time only cots for rent. There was not enough office space for all the new oil companies starting up. 1917 and 1918 brought drought to Wichita Falls. Amidst the construction boom throughout the city and more oil discoveries in the area, as well as the building of Caulfield Army Base, a major water source for the city, Lake Wichita went dry. Thankfully, on March 29, 1918, a 2.5-inch rain soaked the entire area and broke the drought. The Great War continued in Europe. An army division containing most of the Wichita Falls boys was ordered to the front. Texans brought Liberty bonds and participated in food conservation programs. Give till it hurts and do your bit were the slogans of the day. On September 29, 1918, the city's first case of influenza, the Spanish flu, was diagnosed by a Caulfield health officer. The first death occurred 10 days later. The disease spread from a Caulfield airman and soon affected hundreds. Wichita Falls, like the rest of the nation, was unprepared to handle this epidemic. The number of sick civilians quickly overwhelmed the new general hospital. Government buildings such as the courthouse were used to house the overflow of sick patients, and a shortage of healthcare workers prompted city officials to call for members of the community with healthcare experience to help physicians. I think there was worldwide over 25 million people died from that influenza.
In a few weeks, when the crisis passed, the newspapers began to report that the movie theaters, the oil stock exchange, churches, and schools that had been once closed were now beginning to open. It was on November 11, 1918, that an armistice was signed. The war was over, and in June of 1919, an honorable discharge from the National Army was given to our Wichita Falls soldier boys. Wichita Falls, the city that faith built, remained strong, and citywide church membership increased, making it necessary to build new churches. On October 29, 1919, this urgent need was discussed by the First Methodist Church at the fourth quarterly conference. Should they build one new church to house all of their large and growing congregation, or would Methodism in the city be better served by creating a new Methodist congregation of equal size to First Methodist in another part of town? They voted unanimously to create a new congregation and a new church building.
At that time, First Methodist formed two boards of stewards, one for First Methodist and one for Floral Heights Methodist. With this decided, things moved rapidly. 4 days later, the Floral Heights board met. Officers were elected, annual conference delegates were told to find a pastor for the new church, and a building committee was appointed and tasked with finding a home for the new pastor. 10 days later, they met again. The Reverend W.L. Tittle was sent by the annual conference to pastor the new church. He was in attendance. His salary was set at $4,000 a year. Use of the second floor of the high school was obtained for worship services. The first church service was set the following Sunday, November 16th. Before leaving the meeting, those present pledged $40,000 towards the building fund for the new church. For $20 a month, space at the high school on Broad Street was rented for Sunday services. This school would later become Reagan Junior High and is today our school system's administration building. A few months later, land at the corner of 10th and Denver was loaned to the new church by a Mr. Hunter and Mr. J.S. Birdwell, so a temporary wooden structure known as the Tabernacle could be built. The Tabernacle was the church home until the completion of the new building. At that time, the church membership was 375. Weekly notices in the newspaper told of upcoming sermons and inspiring music. The public was encouraged to come join in these tabernacle services. The Floral Heights membership continued to grow.
The building committee purchased a lot at the corner of 10th and Polk that had a frame house on it to be used for the parsonage. The architect, E. Stanley Field, was chosen to design the new church, and building began early in 1920. Total cost of the land, parsonage, church building, and church furnishings was $200,000. I know, not much, but it was then. The names of the men on that building committee are carved into the facade of this original church building that faces 10th Street. They're still there for us to see. Their names are John Bland, T.J. Wagoner, Edgar Breedlove, P.J. Martin, P.A. Martin, P.J. Lee, and Lester Jones. With great dedication of spirit and hard work, the members of Floral Heights Methodist Church built the new temple on the corner of 10th and Polk. On March 7th, 1921, a banquet was held in the basement of the new church, and plans were made for the formal opening. On a beautiful Sunday morning, May 1st, 1921, the entire congregation of men, women, and children gathered at the tabernacle and marched to the site of the new church. As they marched, they sang the old hymn, "On Jordan's Stormy Banks." The first service in the church was held at 11 o'clock on that bright, sunny morning. Consecration of the new Floral Heights Methodist Church took place the following Sunday, May 8th. The headline in the Wichita Daily News read, "From nothing to $200,000 plant in 18 months is a feat Floral Heights Methodist Church will celebrate today."
The new church was formally opened with Bishop Ainsworth as speaker, and the building was filled to capacity. Membership had reached 600. They didn't forget their roots lay in the First Methodist Church on Lamar Street. They were one congregation at once. They were once one congregation. The First Methodist congregation and their pastor, Samuel Black, came to the worship service at the new church that morning. That night, the Floral Heights congregation went to worship with them at the First Methodist. We want to mention here shortly, before the birth of Floral Heights Methodist Church, a new organization for young men, the Boy Scouts of America, was introduced to the area. Boy Scout Troop 1 of Wichita Falls was established in 1914 and officially registered in March of 1916. The first sponsor was the First Methodist Church. In 1928, Floral Heights Methodist Church became Troop 1's new sponsor. Throughout the years, Boy Scout leaders like Bill Fortune, Jim Hughes, and many others have helped young men reach their scouting goals. The Boy Scouts of Troop 1 remain an active part of our church to this very day. There are today Floral Heights church members whose parents and grandparents worked and supported this church in its beginning years. The names of Lyle Wagner Huddleston, Dr. Stephen Rule, and Mary Leona Kilpatrick Horton may be familiar to you. At this time, Mary Leona would like to share a few of her memories here at Floral Heights with us.
Now, I wasn't here at the beginning. I was here a little bit later. One of the things I wanted to tell you about, my parents told about this, about the tabernacle. The floor of the tabernacle was straw, which was great, except after the sermons, the kids had straw fights. And parents did not like that. The parsonage was next door to the church, I remember that. There was a driveway in between us, maybe two, one for the church and one for the house. It was a two-story house, and the children, I don't ever remember having Sunday school there, but I remember it. And it got where, after the parsonage moved somewhere else, we used it for a haunted house. Now, there were houses all down the street, and on Ninth Street, there were houses everywhere, because that's all the room we had. In the back of the church, right back here, there was a big, big tree. I don't know what kind it is, I just remember it was a big tree. It was very shady, and they had benches, and we had Sunday evening services out there because we didn't know what air conditioning was back then. We had no idea. If some of you have never looked at the ceiling of this, it slants to this way. This was where the worship center was, up over the choir, and it's the stained glass window that's in the chapel, but it had more pictures around it, and some of them are in the windows of the chapel, you'll notice. The original office was right off here, so was the kitchen, and those rooms were classrooms. Where the division is, that part of the room was the nursery room. That's where I grew up. I don't remember being in that little room. That was for the tiny babies. They had cribs and so forth in there. That's the reason there's a half bath over in the corner, was because they had the babies in there. And all those rooms back there were classrooms. The room where the elevator and the prayer room are now was a classroom, and there was a fireplace in that classroom, which had a chimney that went all the way up 4 stories, and every room and over that had a fireplace in it. Now the main auditorium was much bigger than what ours is, I believe. It seemed bigger. It had a balcony in it, and it had seating over probably where the kitchen part is now. It had seating, and there were classrooms behind it and classrooms behind the balcony. And now we had radiators for heating, and we had big fans for cooling. Now, the ceiling of the church itself is the ceiling you see in this room over us where the choir practices and where they have that. So you know, for a fan to do much good in the summertime, it had to have a long strap, and it did. The fans did a pretty good job, but they also dripped oil occasionally. I can remember that. Let me see what else I need to tell you. In 1949, they started talking about building some more room because our enrollment had multiplied quite a bit. And they finished the church in the late 50s. Dewey and I happened to be the first members of the church to marry in March of 51, and we had a floodlight sitting on the floor because there was no chandeliers. They had to come in, and there was no cross in the middle of it because they had got to come in. Does that mean anything?
Can you hear her? Not very well.
I'll get close. And then they built, after they built the new sanctuary, then they built the office wing. And I had youngsters in that wing, and when I first walked in, I knew the architect, Bob Winger, and I said to him, this isn't gonna work. There was one banister going up the stairway, and I could see the kids catching hold of that and swinging down. So they had to add that right quick. The last wing was in 1979, and they built that. They were building that when the tornado happened. And when it happened, Jim Palmer, by himself, and got others to help him, loaded up the porta potties and the generators and moved them over to here. And we had a Red Cross Center during that time. And something happened during that I will never, never forget. We have been up here helping, and our part of town was not disturbed, those of you know. But there were a lot of people that lost homes and everything. And we had a clothes closet across the street, and the old home that finally became the Boys Club, the Boys Foundation for the Boy Scouts. And we didn't know what we were going to do. We were running out of food because we wouldn't everything. And somebody suggested we stop and say a prayer. Within less than an hour, the phone rang, and one of the fast food places over on the expressway, which wasn't an expressway then, said they had cooked up so many pounds of meat and they had no way to keep it because we had no electricity. So we had hamburgers to feed the people that night. That is something I will never forget. And in closing, I'd like to tell you that through fires, which we had in the 1970s, and we were able to have classes out at Midwestern thanks to James Stewart, who was Dean of Students and a member of this church. And we met there for a long time. And the youth came up here the day it happened. It was due to a shortage in the electrical system on the altar. They were rehearsing for a wedding. I don't know. We don't know whether they didn't turn it off or there was just a shortage. But anyway, it could have been a lot worse. The only thing, the bad thing was we spelled spoke all that year, and they burned some kind of ozone. We had ozone fans all over the church, but mainly in this area, because the smoke absorbed into the concrete holes that we had in the church. And in spite of all of that, I always think about that prayer of when we pray. And so we can realize that God does answer our prayers, and no matter what comes, we can always look to Him. And aren't we thankful that we have this church? Now, we've talked about the founding of the church, and now we're going to talk about the very foundation, the very walls and the stained glass windows that house our church family. Next.
Thank you, Mary Leona. That was wonderful. It makes me proud to be a part of this church. You see what we come from. And now Larry Parks is going to talk to us about the foundation, the walls, and the windows.
Well, I knew I was in trouble when they told me that I've got to follow Mary Leona. How you do that? I want want to talk to you tonight about the building itself. Just give you some facts about the building itself and how the building came about. Mary Leona's already explained an awful lot about that firsthand. And I would also say after we're through tonight, if anybody is interested, the architectural drawings for this original building that we're sitting in right now are back here on the table, where you can see the floor plan of each floor and cross sections through the building, which kind of help you more easily understand how it all went together. Where we're sitting right now, as Mary Leona said, was the primary and the youth area of the church right here, with an area back there in the corner for the babies. And of course the kitchen was here, and at that time the floor continued on back another 20 feet back to the wall behind us, behind the hallway at this same level. And that's where, as she said, the kitchen was right here where Charles is sitting. That was the entrance into the kitchen area. And there were some classrooms back there in the back. But this space right here in a lot of ways has not changed that much from the original construction. Moving up to the next floor up, as she said, the sanctuary was right above us, and that's where the ceiling slopes down here. You can see where the floor used to slope down. That was a very large sanctuary, especially for that period. It was about 50 feet across and about 60 feet deep. And these, by the way, before I forget, these windows back here, these stained glass windows in the back are original. They've never moved. They've been here since 1920. Upstairs in the sanctuary, if you're familiar with the youth auditorium, and we'll show a slide here in a minute of that, those windows are original as well. Those were original to the sanctuary at that time. And the window that is now in the chapel, the Jesus window, was original in the back of the original sanctuary right above us. That window was moved at the time the current sanctuary was built. So what I'm going to do is we'll go through a few slides here and talk a little bit about this building, mainly about this building and our current sanctuary building. Of course, this is an elevation view of the original building from the 10th Street side. You can see the three doors there at the bottom are now where we have windows now. And this is kind of hard to see. This drawing is much easier to see back here on the table. This is a section cut through the building as if we just took a big saw and cut through it, coming this way, right down the middle. What we're looking at here is the sloped floor. There you can see there just below the basement level. The lower level is where we're sitting now. And that was the sanctuary right above it. And off in front where you see all that row of doors was a lecture hall that faced to the side of the sanctuary. And the balcony was up there to the left, up on the third level. And again, here's an aerial photograph. Probably, I'm guessing this was made by one of the planes from Caulfield. They did an aerial study of Wichita Falls back in the 1918, 1920 time period. I don't know that for a fact, but anyway, it's a good aerial photograph, and it shows you the limits of the development. We've talked about how this church was built back when the town was growing out this way. And as you can see up there on past the church, there were no other houses past probably 7th Street. Coyote Canyon football stadium was just another block there past where those last houses sit. So that'll give you a perspective of what was here at the time. And you can see the homes all around the church. When it was first built, I mean, there were homes right up against it. And Polk Street's not even paved. There's just a nice view of some of the fenestration right up here at the front. This is the only picture I've ever seen of the interior of the original sanctuary that sat right above us. I wish I knew whose wedding this is. Someone might know, but anyway, you can see the window there in the background. That is the same window that's in the back of our chapel today. Sorry. There it is, a little bit better view. And again, there's the back of the chapel where it sits today. So that window has been around a long time. And another picture of the front of this building from out at 10th Street. You can see these used to be the doors people would come into to come to church. You would go in these doors and down this hallway and up the stairs. You actually had to climb stairs to get into the sanctuary. You either came in here or through the stairway and the doors off of Polk Street. So everybody had to be pretty hardy back then. Now here's a good view. This is taken today in the youth auditorium directly above us, which was the sanctuary. And you're looking out, these windows look out toward 10th Street. They are exactly where they've been for the last 100 years. And you can see, as Mary Leona said, the volume of that space. You really can't even see the ceiling from here, but that was a very nice, voluminous space up there in that old sanctuary. Just another detail there off of 10th Street. And here's the other stair that if you didn't want to come in the front and climb these stairs, you had to go up the stairs here to get up to the sanctuary level. And again, here's a good picture of the church, probably before it was dedicated, I'm guessing. I'm not sure, but you can see that Polk Street is still unpaved, and we've got some real extensive landscaping put out around the building already. And the private home next door, I'm not sure which of those homes was the original parsonage. I'm sure Mary Leona probably remembers which one it was, but yeah, could have been that one, or there was one directly behind as well. So the church was just shoehorned in there for a while with homes all around it. Another view there where the trees have grown a little bit. I've always wondered what that little structure is back there at the very back on the left. I don't know that anyone knows what. I see. I knew it wasn't an outhouse because we did have indoor plumbing. One thing that's interesting to me, besides the fact that the sanctuary was up so many flights of stairs in the first place, there were only 6 restrooms in this building, and they were all just one fixture restrooms, just a single fixture restroom, and every one of them save one was down here at the basement level. The only restroom that was anywhere else in the building was behind, next to the pastor's office, back behind the sanctuary, at the back of the sanctuary. So it was not a public restroom. So they were all down here. Things have really changed as far as building code. And now moving on to the the current sanctuary that I believe we occupied in 52. Does that sound about right, Mary Leona? 1952. This is a plaque that you can see this toward the back of the sanctuary. And we have some good, let me get this going the right direction here. We have some good photographs of when that sanctuary was being built. I know the architectural drawings start dating in 1946, right after World War II. And I guess we finally got it built and dedicated in 52. But as you'll see here, this is the current sanctuary under construction. And just to give you bearings, this wall right here is where the cross is now over the choir, our current choir area. So you can see here's the new roof structure, and here are these arches along the south wall of the current sanctuary, and this framing is where the bell tower stands today. Where this is taken on 10th Street, across 10th Street, looking back. Best we can tell, this is the architect's car. I think he was there that day, doing job observation, and his wife probably took all these pictures of him. And here's another interesting view. This is as if you were standing back in the narthex today, looking toward the front. Here's where the cross hangs today. Right, there's an arch that comes over this area right here, right over the choir loft, and there's a window from the old original sanctuary that just hasn't been closed in yet. And of course, there's still just a dirt floor in here at that time. This is looking in the doorway, the south door off of 10th Street into the narthex. And as you can see, this is probably the architect here, and he's visiting with one of the masons that's mixing mortar. We're standing here at 10th Street looking through the narthex back to the south. I'm sorry, back to the north. And here's a picture of that door right there. This is, again, an interesting pose. I think this fellow was posing for the picture here. But anyway, these are wood forms that were made to do the arches over the windows in the side of the sanctuary. Here's a picture of some of those. See up here, and this is standing up close to the front of the sanctuary, looking at a sidewall. Again, a good picture of the architect here. They seem to know right where to be at each time. But you can imagine, look at the rubble on the ground here. This is all where the pews start right along here today and move back. So it really looks different now. Another view looking back toward the rear of the sanctuary. Yeah. And again, just a picture of the bell tower as it's finished. Just some of the architectural drawings. This is looking toward the chancel area with back at that time, the pulpit was right here in the center. We've had quite a few different variations of over the years as far as where the pulpit and the chancel area and the choir area. And again, this is the cross that today is up over the choir. Another picture of that. At one time, I guess I assume these were curtains. Right. Had to replace that cross. I remember how it smelled after that fire. I thought that smell was never going to go away.
What year was the fire?
1971. And here's another variation on the the chancel area. This is what was famously known as the wine rack. It was a lot of you may remember this. It was a metal decorative element, and it had lots of holes in it that were just about the size of a wine rack. So that's what it became known as, the wine rack.
How long was it there?
It was there for several years. I believe it went up after the fire, didn't it, Mary Leona? And I don't know. I don't remember when it came down. Yeah, I was really excited when they decided to do away with the wine rack. And here's another view, just looking down the center aisle from the narthex. You can see the wine rack's gone, and we have a new cross up. Wedding, view of a wedding here. Very dignified. Just another view of the choir area. There's Karen. All right. And you can see, if any of you have never noticed, this is where all the pipes are. Up here on the north side, right above the choir. The room behind this is where all the pipe organ paraphernalia is. No, that's fairly recent. Yeah, we do have pipes on the other side, but this is the side where the room actually, there's a room behind it with all the mechanisms and things in there. And I wanted to get this picture. A lot of people may not have ever seen the organ from this side, this perspective. This is Jimmy working her magic. And it's just amazing when you look at all to me, it always reminds me of the cockpit of a 747. There's just so many things to deal with. And she does it so well. Here's an architectural drawing of the dome and the bell tower, and there's a Sunday school room right below the tower itself, and this is what the dome looked like for about 30 years. Originally, the dome was made of copper, and at some point in time, I don't know when, this was probably back in maybe the late 50s or 60s, it was painted brown, and at some point in time it was sandblasted, and you can see an awful lot of, let me get back to that, you can see a lot of dents and so forth in it. You don't notice that from far away, but when you get up really close to it, you can see that. But this is what our dome looked like for probably 20 to 30 years before it was finally covered with gold leaf as it is today. And, beg pardon?
I heard a story about it, but I never heard who did it.
Well, the gold leaf was done as a part of the overall project that we did back in 2000. We did a lot of things during that construction. We recovered the 3rd and 4th floors and put in the elevator and did an awful lot of work all over the church. And part of that endeavor was to do the gold dome. There was a church member, an anonymous donor who.
Oh, it was anonymous. I've never heard who.
Right.
I just heard that he said it was for that owners.
Right. He wanted to pay for it, and it was all paid for by one individual. And that's what he wanted to do, and so the dome got covered with gold leaf, and this is some of the scaffolding work that went up around the dome. See, you can see it there, and right here, the dome is actually right there. So all this scaffolding had to come up much higher. And then, I don't know that we have a picture of this, but this was all shrouded in a white shroud while the work was going on. And I got to go up and do a little bit of it just because I was on the building committee at the time, and boy, that was fun. You climb up in that scaffolding and get up in here and get to brush a little of that gold leaf on until I looked down. The shroud didn't cover the bottom. You could look down and see all the way to the ground, and it was pretty spooky when you started looking at it from that perspective. And this is what it looks like today. One other element I just wanted to point out, I don't know if everyone ever gets around to the 10th Street side, but one of my favorite elements of this building has been the lion right here over the fountain. And I think I've got another picture of it right here. There's a good picture of the lion. Yeah. Used to have water. Whoops. Here we go. Right here, the water, if you haven't ever seen it, there's a pump that the water comes out of the lion's mouth into the pond, and you can hear the water splashing. And one of these days I'm going to get that working again. It's just the pump wore out, but all we need is another pump. But I just wanted to throw that in. That's always been one of my favorite things I remember as a child. Mm-hmm. So that's the end of my part. I hope you learned something that you didn't already know. Oh yeah.
Thank you, Larry. Very interesting. Throughout these many years, the Lord and the members of our church have remained faithful to the vision given by our founding fathers. As time has passed, Floral Heights Methodist Church has added many new family members as well as new ministries to serve the people of Floral Heights neighborhood. There are ministries like the Prayer Shawl Ministry, serving the ill, the Food Pantry, serving area families in need, and Breakfast at the Heights, serving people in need of a hot meal and the good news of Jesus. It is in the memory of our founding fathers and their inspired vision that we celebrate the centennial anniversary of our church, Floral Heights United Methodist Church. Thank you.
As some of you know, we have another event coming up. I believe it's called the Night of Stories. That will be in November. And Rex, in November the 6th, Linda tells me, Rex Siegler has some information to give you.
In the cafe tonight, there are 2 antique typewriters, the old manual ones, that have some paper available. And if you would like to type your story and send that in, you're very welcome to do so. I do have a high-tech scanner that we can scan it and post it online if you wish. But if you would like to do that, they're in the Gold Dome cafeteria.
We're going to ask Pastor Brian to come and say a prayer for us.
Tell everybody about what's up here.
Oh, that's right. Before you leave the building tonight, I hope that you've had a chance to step up here and see the harpsichord. We had 3 Floral Heights members, church members, that built that from a kit by hand. And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful instrument. And also we have a beautiful wedding table. And we'd like you to see all of the wedding photos that people have sent in, pictures through the years. Here's Pastor Brian.
First off, let me just, as a newbie, arriving. It's remarkable how for 100 years the people that have a tie to this church have found common ground to come together to do God's work. And the legacy that has provided, the first 100 years, the groundwork. And so I'm thankful that I can be a part of the history of this church, as I'm hoping most of you all are. But this entire period of celebration of 100 years, this was not our first event. It's actually the second event, I believe. And Rex just shared about the story event that's coming up. And of course, we've got the big celebration weekend on November 16 and 17, culminating with an outstanding worship experience that Sunday morning. But tonight, let's tell the planning committee, yes, but especially the history planning subcommittee. Let's show them how much we appreciate them. So let's pause for just a moment and turn our hearts and minds to the Lord in prayer. Oh God, for your faithfulness, we thank you. And for the vision that you've placed in the hearts and minds of the people called Methodists in this community, we give you thanks. And for the bright future of your church and the ministries we offer with the people of this community and beyond, we give you thanks. Thank you for a wonderful evening. And now we just pray your hedge of protection upon us as we go out into the world to continue to serve you. We ask and pray these things in the name of Jesus and in the power of your Holy Spirit. Amen.